All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful concept from a sermon by Apostle Michael Orrickbo, and it's this idea of a spiritual reset. We're going to break down what it is, why it's so important, and how it can actually happen. So let's jump right in.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever hit a spiritual wall? You know that feeling where you feel like you're just stuck, going through the motions, and you know you need some kind of profound change? Well, that feeling is exactly what this whole idea of a spiritual reset is designed to address.
So that's what we're going to unpack in this explainer. We're going to look at this framework for personal transformation. We'll get into what a spiritual reset actually is, why the speaker believes it's absolutely necessary, and then the path to actually achieving one, all based on the source material.
Okay, first things first. What is a spiritual reset, really? Let's get right into the definition that's laid out.
According to the sermon, this isn't just some vague, fuzzy feeling. It's actually built on three very distinct pillars: repentance, renewal, and realignment. Let's take a closer look at each one.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The source gives us a pretty unique take on repentance. It's not just about turning away from sin. It's framed as this continuous process of turning from one level of spiritual understanding, or glory, to an even higher one. Think of it like a constant upward journey. All right, next up is renewal. And this one is all about your identity. It's described as a kind of mental reprogramming. It's where your entire self-perception shifts. So instead of defining yourself by your situation or your mistakes, you start to see yourself the way God sees you. And that brings us to the third pillar, realignment. This is all about reprioritizing. It's the deliberate act of making God the absolute center of your focus. Pushing aside all the other distractions that are constantly pulling for your attention.
Okay, so now we have the definition down, but that just brings up the next obvious question, right? Why is a reset even necessary in the first place? Let's dig into the reasons that the sermon lays out.
The sermon gives us a whole bunch of critical reasons. It's about breaking free from distractions, sure, but it's also about overcoming that awful feeling of spiritual stagnation or even burnout. A reset is seen as the way to reignite that first love, to get fresh clarity and direction, and ultimately to get back that sense of joy and peace, especially when you feel like you're heading into a new season of life. And the source really stresses the urgency here. Spiritual burnout is presented as a real and present danger. The idea is that when you feel completely overwhelmed by challenges, maybe the problem isn't how big the challenge is. Maybe it's that your own inner strength is low. A reset, then, becomes the way you refuel and build that strength back up.
So, we've covered the what and the why. Now let's get to the really practical part, the how. What actually kicks off a spiritual reset? What are the catalysts?
Well, the sermon suggests a reset is no accident. It's usually triggered by very specific spiritual forces. And while a few are mentioned, we're going to focus on the two that are really emphasized as being these powerful agents of change.
The first one, and this is a big one, is the power of a divine encounter. This is presented as one of those life-altering experiences that can just completely change everything about a person's path. And to really illustrate this, the source points to the story of Moses. Think about it. He fled Egypt as a coward, but one powerful, transformative encounter with God turned him into a deliverer. The message is pretty clear. It's the encounter itself that makes all the difference.
But here's the key. This isn't about passively waiting around. The sermon suggests you can actively seek these encounters. How? Well, first, by carrying deep spiritual concerns or burdens for people or situations. Second, by cultivating this relentless hunger for a deeper connection. And third, by committing to a life of service.
Okay, so the second major force for a reset is prophecy. And to explain this, the sermon uses this incredibly dramatic biblical story of the Valley of Dry Bones, a situation that looks about as hopeless as you can get. Really try to picture this scene, a valley just filled with old, dry, scattered bones. It's the very definition of lifelessness, of decay. And then God asks the prophet Ezekiel this almost impossible question. Can these bones live? And the answer isn't a simple yes or no. The answer is an action. It's a command. The prophet is told to speak life directly into this dead situation, to literally prophesy to the bones.
And the result is just mind-blowing. The bones don't just get a little life back. They come together, they form bodies, and they rise up as a massive, powerful army. This story is used to show how prophecy is a force that can literally reverse decay and create something incredibly strong out of absolutely nothing.
So, after this kind of profound, deep transformation, what's on the other side? What are the actual results of a successful spiritual reset?
The source really points to 3 key outcomes here. The first is revival, that feeling of being set on fire again with passion. That revival then leads to transformation, a deep, fundamental change in your character. And finally, all of this comes together to give you direction, a brand new sense of clarity and purpose.
And this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from this whole thing. According to the sermon, none of this, not the renewal, not the encounters, not the transformation, none of it just happens by chance. It all hinges on one thing: being deliberate, being intentional.
This quote, which refers to the parable of the talents, just drives that point home so powerfully. It's all about appetite. The one who has something and desires more, they get more. But the one who's passive, who doesn't have that deliberate hunger, they risk losing even the little that they have. And really, that just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If a spiritual reset is truly the result of deliberate, intentional action, then it brings up a pretty critical question for all of us. What is one area in your own life where just a little more intentionality could completely change your entire trajectory?